Douglas has told me stories since we were married. We were married April 2012. We met in 2011. We met on a dating website. And it was a funny story because I had been single for many, many years and was just looking for the right guy, right? So I joined this dating website. It was eHarmony. And I decided to go for a full year. And it was at the last month, and there was just nobody out there. I ran across this guy, and he was telling me these stories that he's an anthroposophist. He was a former Jesuit. I was so triggered by all these words. I could not wait to meet him. But there was a problem because you know how you on your dating site you're putting up your best picture. Well, he would put his picture up with his 4 children, and he was already divorced at that time, and he was wanting to make sure that whoever wanted to date him saw that he had 4 children. So I said, "Well, how is that working for you?" And the joke is, of course, I wound up with Douglas, and it's been just an incredible journey with him, and one that I'm so happy that we can share with you tonight. So one of the things is he would tell me these stories, and in the beginning, I didn't believe them. I was crazy about the guy, but I just didn't believe his stories. And he would tell me about the time that he would meet with the Dalai Lama, and he and the Dalai Lama were buddies, and all this kind of stuff. And I listened; it was interesting. But one day, his good friend John Barnwell had come to visit, and out of the blue, John mentioned, "Yeah, you remember that time you and the Dalai Lama were blah, blah, blah." And I went, "Oh my gosh, so it's true." And so that's the story I want you to share with folks tonight. How in the world did you bump into the Dalai Lama?
Oh my! Well, I met the Dalai Lama through my root guru in the Galupa tradition, who is Gaelic Rinpoche. He lived in Ann Arbor and was brought to America by two young ladies who'd gone to India, and he came to teach at the University of Michigan. And when he got here, he didn't speak English very well, and there were just a few of us in the group. And I always noticed that it was kind of odd that he'd always want me to sit with my knee touching him. He wanted to always touch me. Every time he'd see me, he'd touch me. He'd grab my beard and he wouldn't let go of me, or he'd start kissing me on the lips in front of other people, and then pretty soon it became a joke that one day I had a taiguk, the curved knife of Vajrayogini, of the great goddess, which they also used to chop up your body and offer your body to the vultures. But anyway, I had it on my neck, and he saw it, and he goes, "Oh, taiguk!" And he jumped up and leapt on you like what's called yam yum when you're, in union. And he wrapped his legs around my waist and was kissing me on the lips, and people couldn't understand.
Was this something he just does to all the people?
No, he does it to nobody else but me.
So people are watching the Dalai Lama jump on you front to
No,
front.
no, this is my teacher.
Oh, your teacher.
This is the warm-up.
Up.
I first have to set up the stage because my Gaelic Rinpoche was what's called crazy wisdom. He did crazy things, but he would really do crazy things to me, and I never understood it, and it always made me feel uncomfortable. And then why he always made me sit next to him, really close, touching. And so he would bring all kinds of great high lamas, and he was considered to be, Gaelic Rinpoche, was considered to be one of the three aspects of the incarnation of the Panchen Lama. And the Panchen Lama is the head tutor for the Dalai Lama. So he was the Dalai Lama's teacher, and he also held the lineage holder. He was the lineage holder of the Galupa tradition for what's called Vajrayogini. And Vajrayogini is the highest Yoga Tantra. It's so high that the Dalai Lama doesn't get to do it. He has to come to Gaelic Rinpoche to get it. And it's so high that they say once you do Vajrayogini initiation, first off, it has to be your karma that you even have the opportunity to do it. Second off, if you do it every day faithfully, which means it's a tantra, and in this case, the highest Yoga Tantra, you choose one person to do this with, and that's it. You only get one chance. And after that, you can do it by yourself. But it is the opposite of what everybody thinks Tantra is. But anyway, so this says, if you get this initiation and you do it every single day faithfully, you will transcend, you will reach enlightenment, either in this incarnation or in your next. And in the next incarnation, it will come and it will grab you and it will make you enter into the initiation. Well, that's what happened to me. I didn't want to study Buddhism. I'd already got a degree in comparative religions. I'd studied as much Buddhism as I wanted to. I was a Christian and I didn't understand. But Steiner says that you need to understand Buddhism before you can truly understand Christianity, because the stages of explaining compassion and suffering in old age and illness, and the 6 stages of compassion are a prerequisite for the 7th stage of love. And so really Buddha came and set the stage for Christ afterwards. So I'd say, but why? And Steiner did a whole lecture series on the Epistle of Paul and the Bhagavad Gita, or on Buddha, from Buddha to Christ, or whatever.
Yeah, that was the book I would recommend if you wanted to read something, From Buddha to Christ by Steiner. Yes.
And so usually Steinerites stay away from that because it's not Christian. And, there's so much offered out there in today's age, all the secret teachings of all the traditions except one, and are available in English. Only one. There's a couple that aren't, but the one that I'm thinking of is the Bonpo initiation rites, which there's only one place in America you can get that. Now, how does it happen that the Dalai Lama comes to America? All of the top Tibetan teachers come to America. They were told to come to America, and the Dalai Lama said to come to America. He told Gaelic Rinpoche, "You have to go to America and you have to train Americans." And they're thinking, well, why would I do that? They're materialists. They're, whatever. So the top teachers come here. But let me explain this. Okay, so here I am living in Detroit, and my friend Robert Thibodeau knows the 2 girls who brought Gaelic Rinpoche to Ann Arbor. So I'm in the inner group of like 4 or 5, 6 people who gather around him from the second he gets here. So
and that was with the bookstore, the Mayflower. And that's important because in your story you mentioned the Mayflower. So Robert Thibodeau is a proprietor of the Mayflower bookstore, still in Detroit, the most eclectic, esoteric bookstore around for real books. However, good luck getting Rob to show up at any regular hours.
Yeah, the Mayflower Bookshop is now in Berkeley, Michigan, and it used to be in Ferndale. And I've been associated with him for a long, long time. And he sold more anthroposophic books. He sold more Steiner books than the Steiner book people sold in the old days when the Waldorf Institute was here. And literally we had a group of 200 people would gather. It'd be 3 if we'd let anybody know ahead of time.
The thing is and Gaelic Rinpoche was in Ann Arbor. So this Detroit, Ann Arbor energy sitting on the salt mines you talk about on fire. We had Pat Flanagan here, and who else was the guy with the color, the circle color, the color stuff?
Dinshaw.
Dinshaw, yeah.
I mean, Marianne Williamson came and actually did a stint here at the Unity Church.
Marianne Williamson, one of Douglas's girlfriends back in the day.
No, not Thibodeau's girlfriend, not my girlfriend. I know you always think that.
Okay.
I advised her. That's all I did.
Okay, well, that's a story for another day, but let's go back to Gaelic Rinpoche and the Dalai Lama.
So Gaelic Rinpoche continues. Now he's had Jewel Heart Temple, and he has since passed into the spiritual world. And he was a dear friend of mine, and my great root guru teacher, who taught me all levels of Sutrayana, Mantrayana, Hinayana. I mean, both Mahayana, Hinayana, but also Tantrayana, because he was the only person. He was the highest holder of the right to teach the highest yoga tantra in the Gelugpa tradition. Okay, so he very slowly, over many years, trained us, and he made us work really, really, really hard in the 7-limb practice. And literally, there was one time I did a retreat where we had to do 10,000 of this very complicated mantra, 10,000 of them, and stay in that state until you get it done, just to go to the next step. And it was all about morality training, and I learned about Buddhism, but he would invite these teachers there, and his best buddy is the Dalai Lama, and the Dalai Lama would come there and do anything that Gaelic Rinpoche would ask him to do. So they would Hill Auditorium, they would use the biggest place, and they'd stuff it with people. But the first time I met the Dalai Lama, he was standing in line greeting people, where you give him a silk scarf and he puts it back on you and blesses you, and then you go on. hundreds of people. People were waiting for hours, they were in line just to see him. And they had sold out. And here's Gaelic Rinpoche standing there. And then here's the Dalai Lama. And when he met me, he took my hand and he goes, "Old friend," put his head on my forehead and said, "Keep teaching the children."
I thought that was Mother Teresa.
She said the exact same thing.
Another story.
So did Guru Ma, and so did a few others. Why they put their head on my forehead and tell me to keep teaching the children, I don't know.
They had a transmission for you. You had to go from pineal gland to pineal gland.
Yes.
And you received the transmission. And that happens a lot when the spirit arrived at our home. We didn't notice anything remarkable, but about the third day, I walked by it and it was radiating this heat. I could feel coming from it. And so I put my hand on it. It was very, very hot, but I knew immediately I was having a spiritual transmission, but I needed Douglas to also sense the physical heat so that there could be a witness to it. So I called him in the room, and you felt the physical heat.
Oh, yeah.
And we have not felt it since, but it's like that. Their spiritual transmissions can come to you in that way. You don't even know. It takes years sometimes to unpack it.
Yeah. So the Dalai Lama keeps hanging on to me and won't let go. And then he turns to Gaelic Rinpoche and says, "This is the teacher you told me about." And Gaelic Rinpoche says, yes. He goes, "I'm done now. Thank you." And tells everyone else, the 100 people behind us, he's done. And they forced him back out the door we came in. And the whole time I'm trying to say, well, this is my girlfriend. Can she stay? Oh, no, they took her and moved her out of the room too.
And it was not me. That was your girlfriend at the time, was not me. But the thing is that's the story. John says, yeah, you remember that time, that long line to see the Dalai Lama, and he just pulls you from the line, kisses you, and sends everybody else away. And
then we're in the room alone, and he sits down, same thing Mother Teresa did, and just wants to put their hands on me. I don't know what that's about. They want to sit down and like put their knees to your knees and put their hands on you and keep touching you and keep and putting and well, for a long time they didn't take their head off my forehead off the forehead. So I didn't know what that meant at that point. Now, mind you, I was born clairvoyant. All high lamas in the Tibetan tradition are clairvoyant. A clairvoyant knows a clairvoyant. It's as simple as that. Okay, so they see me, and from that point on, once I got involved in Buddhism, and Gaelic Rinpoche brought the top teachers, all the top teachers in even multiple traditions. There's 4 types of schools of Tibetan Buddhism, Bompo included, and a 5th, that's the 5th. I've had teaching in all of those. And every time I meet these people, if they're a high lama, they do a trip with me. They want me to sit next to them. And I didn't know what that meant.
Why do you think I chose you?
And so I hate sitting in lotus, and I have to sit in a chair. And so I literally stopped going because I couldn't sit there with them properly. So I got to then after Gaelic Rinpoche for years and years and years. Now, mind you, I'm a Christian, but I'm studying Buddhism because Steiner said to study Buddhism. So I'm studying it, and it's really mind training. It's probably the best mind training that has ever been codified in 5 different schools and blah, blah, blah. And they get results. You don't get to be a Geshe or High Lama unless you have clairvoyant results. And they don't have to do anything but look at you to tell if you have clairvoyant results, right? Now, for them, it's training that develops that. For me, I was born that way, so it wasn't my fault. And I didn't understand what was going on. And they would all treat me like I was their son or something and talk about me. And they all kept calling me the same old name. Oh, Hongpo. And I'm going, what did they say? I never understood for years.
And tell people what the name is. They
would call me Wangpo Zangpo, which means the great Dorje, the great lightning bolt. And I'd go, I don't know what that means. And I had no inclination to study Tibetan Buddhism or anything.
What's the other name?
I mean, the language.
Yeah, but what's the other name that you? What's the name? It's a very
Dorje Doug. They would shorten.
No, not Dorje Doug. What's the name of the former incarnation that you relate to that has that very long name? There's no way I could pronounce it. Okay, well, we'll let that pass.
I shouldn't say that name out loud, but anyway, because
so that's what the hesitancy is.
Well, here's the deal: none of this means anything to me at that point. I would just think, man, these guys are clairvoyant.
Yeah.
I remember coming in Tumtum Rinpoche was up for a while. We had this little tiny place. It was a porch. That was it. The 6 of us could fit in there. And then later it was above a garage. And so I'm coming up up the garage, and you're coming up, and here I see this super high teacher there, and everybody's got their eyes closed. I'm like, oh, this is terrible. Good. I can sneak in and sit in the back. His eye pops open. The second I look at him, and he goes, points at me and says, come here. I'm going, oh man, I can't get away with nothing with these people. So, and every time I'd meet one of them, I'd say the same thing. Hey, Tibetan Buddhism, where's Christ in Tibetan Buddhism? Christ is in the etheric realm. He's the most living being. If you're clairvoyant, you have to see him when you go in the etheric realm. I mean, what do you got? Oh, have a look at this far. Oh, that's a Chinrezig. Well, that's what the Dalai Lama is.
If you couldn't understand what Douglas said, he mumbled it on purpose.
I was saying that the Dalai Lama is Chinrezig. He is Avalokiteshvara. Many different names. But what it means is the being of love. And he is the local person representing the being of love on the earth at that time. Now, are all Dalai Lamas that way? No. As a matter of fact, this Dalai Lama, there was a big issue about, the Chinese say they have the real Dalai Lama, and another group says they have the real Dalai Lama, and a female group says they have the female Dalai Lama, and then there's our good old Dalai Lama. Well, same thing happened with his teacher, the Panchen Lama. So there was Gaelic Rinpoche, and there were 2 other teachers. The other 2, we don't even know what happened to them. So Gaelic Rinpoche came to the West and had to really, because he was the speech incarnation, some say, so he had to really learn English, teach at a university, answer all questions about Tibetan Buddhism. Okay, so then I went to Hawaii. I left this area, went to Hawaii, and when I'm in Hawaii, I look at this bulletin board, and it says that they're going to do the Vajrayogini highest yoga tantra initiation with the head of the Sakya tradition, a different tradition than I had been used to, and that the king of the Sakya tradition, Tenzin Rinpoche, and his wife were going to then come, and then the Tolku of Vajrayogini herself in this tradition, literally the person they say is Vajrayogini.
Tell people what a 2K is.
Tolku.
Tolku.
A Tolku means that they're the physical, local manifestation of a higher spiritual being that lives in another realm. So, and her name is Jetsun Kushila. So I'm looking at this and I'm almost fainting. For 10 years or something, I'd been studying with Gaelic Rinpoche, and he wouldn't give us this initiation. I come to Hawaii, and the first thing I see is, come to Wood Valley Temple.
Oh, maybe they came to Hawaii because it was time for your initiation into the practice.
Well, here's what happened. That temple there, Wood Valley Temple, had the Nechung Rinpoche living there. And the Nechung Rinpoche is the Rinpoche who's so clairvoyant that when the Dalai Lama or some high being dies, they go to the sacred lakes and they sit there and meditate until they see letters above the lakes. And then they put together the mystery to follow those indications from those sacred lakes to find who it is that they're looking for. And that's how they find them. This is a standard process. But that person now lived in Hawaii, and he was really, really old. His name is Nechung Rinpoche. He's called the Angel Dakini reader. So that's where it was being given. And I'm like, oh, you have to be kidding. And literally the incarnation of Vajrayogini, I'm going to get the whole thing. This is a 3-week retreat. It takes 3 weeks to teach this. So I went, I committed, and they taught us this. And how many people showed up? The way it happened was there were these 2 incredible beings, wonderful people, probably still there at Wood Valley Temple, who basically were like the helpers of the Nechung Rinpoche. And they had said, Nechung Rinpoche was dying, and said, well, what is it that you would want? Since you've been here with me and I've held you up and you couldn't travel the world, what would you want? And he said, we would want the Vajrayogini initiation, because you only get it out of the great good karma. This is the highest thing you could possibly get. So they asked to have it. And so he is so high that he invites the top dogs from the Sakya tradition, all of them, to Wood Valley Temple. And so they put up signs all over. And this is like the biggest, I figure the biggest event. I've gone to the Kala Chakra with the Dalai Lama, where people are streaming out the doors, watching it from outside, right? No, here, how many people signed up? 13. 13 of us. and they took us through like the only time in the West that it was ever given out. And so I got this full initiation and got to, hang with all these lamas. And then after that, I traveled wherever I could to meet, top teachers in the different lineages. And my friend Les Collins, who was a Western guy, he is an amazing guy, plays the flute, and he was in the band with Miles Davis. He was like one of the most amazing people I've ever met. His story is really, that's worth another podcast, let me tell you. But anyway, right now he's considered one of the highest monks. He's in Oakland, California, and he has totally gone into the Buddhist thing, the Nyingma Pa tradition, the black hats. And he's a great, great teacher. I don't even know if you can contact him. I think I tried a few times. You can't even contact him anymore. He's in such a rarefied state. So he introduced me to a lot of this. He taught me a lot of it, and we were the best of friends. And every single tanka, which is it's a painting, usually on cloth hanging on a wall. He knew every single detail of every bit of everyone ever. He was such an expert. He was used as an expert, and then he became this, big monk. So he got us involved, and so I would visit him in Ashland or visit him in California, and got to meet, so far I've met 3 different Maitreya Buddhas. See, because the different traditions may choose somebody's different, as they say that's the incarnation of the Maitreya Buddha. Well, I had one that I taught at my school, a young boy, and he was pretty amazing. But then 2 others had come through Hawaii when I was there, because all of them stopped in Hawaii, and they all went through Wood Valley Temple. So anytime someone was coming through, because I was one of their initiates, I could go in there and meet these amazing, amazing Tibetan people. And what I found is that they're probably more Christian than most Christians that you'd ever want to meet, but they don't understand Christ. But if you say to them, tell me about the being of love, and they can talk to you forever about it, because they know who Avalokiteshvara is. That's, a being who has so many types of manifestations. And if most of them don't, like most of the monks never get the Vajrayogini initiation. If you're in the tradition, you have to be highly evolved to get that. And then when I came back here's Gabriel Rinpoche. He does the full initiation 2 or 3 times, and I attended all 3 times. So anyway, that's how I came to know the Dalai Lama. Dalai Lama, by the way, says, believe what he says. They say, oh, you're this high, big, spiritual, fantastic person. He goes, no, I am a simple monk, and I am the last Dalai Lama, he now says. Why? The traditions are all dead. The lineages have all run dry. The Aboriginal people will tell you that. Dreamtime is closed. It's all changed. And so now everyone's on their own. So what does he say? His entire teaching, he will tell you, he's only got one teaching. Be kind to everyone, including yourself. That's it. He can give you all the great teachings. He's a wonderful, brilliant mind.
So is that what he would say to people today?
Yes.
And the horror that we face in the world, he would say the way out is to be kind.
Yes.
Well, I believe that it's service, and your service to others, and nobody should tell you what that service should be, and you express it in the way you want with one person or many. And Douglas and I believe this. That's why we committed to doing something for you out there every single day since, when was it? It was probably early 2016. And in 2015, we were beginning to see that people in the internet world were not really grasping the depth of the serious problems we had. So we wanted to jump in. But we couldn't start at this level, this conversation level, because you weren't ready for it. So we dropped down into the geopolitical and have tried every day to take a step closer to truth. Now, for ourselves, we have found many truths. I mean, it's not like we just were hanging here and didn't get the experience ourselves. But now we see this horrific world. Oh my gosh, I was just telling you about that map that was in a video that I just posted with the areas that the globalists want to be unpopulated with people. And then when they show you where the people will be, you easily see that been wiped out by hurricanes. I mean, I can't help but think that Florida was made very attractive during COVID because it was a honeypot and it was attracting lots of people in there so that hurricanes in the Gulf and the Atlantic can just slam over it. And I'm not talking about tsunamis. I'm talking about, and I'm a Florida girl. I have lived, you name it in Florida, I have lived there. And I've been through a lot of hurricanes, and it's the damage from the hurricanes. So you have electrical transformers out, you've got roofs that need repair. Well, we're facing a world with supply chain issues major. And the takeover of the White House by the British Pilgrim Society, they could shut off Florida easily, and people could die from these hurricanes, unlike any other time that we had in the past where we could get supplies of materials to people. So that's horrific. We're looking at genocide. We're living through genocide. And so the Dalai Lama, you think, would say, in face of that, do what?
Be kind. And remember, he says 20 million Tibetans were murdered in the Tibetan side, in the genocide of the Tibetans, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I forget how many monasteries were burned, and how many monks were just pulled out into the street and killed, as well as any believers. And then they turned it into, they had a high-speed rail that now goes to the Potala Palace in Lhasa, where Dalai Lama lived. And so it's now a Disney World. And places that I had always heard about, but you could never even take a picture in these places because they're so holy. Oh no, you can see them now. They're on the tour. Okay, the Holy Book Room with 120,000 holy texts that go back as far as anything. But now remember, I'm not a Tibetan Buddhist. No. I study now Bonpo, which is Bon, the origin Bon, and it's from a different Buddha, the Sakyamuni Gautama Buddha. Yes, very good, very well. I got all that, but now you got to go back further. Why? Because Tampa Shinra Miwoshe was a matriarchal. He was a Buddha, but he was married and he had a bunch of children, and he was the guy who was the original breeder of horses, and he lived in the
Scythianus, was it? You're saying that he was Scythianus?
No, well, he might have. No, I'm not saying that.
No, okay.
I haven't been able to put that together. I wish I could. But he was, 10,000 BC. He was the Buddha before Gautama Buddha.
Oh.
And his teachings were in Zhangzhung. Well, the Tibetan Buddhists coming out of India basically genocided the Bon people.
Mm-hmm.
Because why? They were matriarchal. And they didn't have priests. And it was a bunch of, seeming shamanistic animism to some degree, but that's where most of the deepest teachings, the Dzogchen teachings, actually come out of the Bon culture. So when you look at the Bon culture, what do they say? Oh, well, it's almost a Christian culture. They lived in perfect harmony with nature. They worshiped the female. They lived in the high mountains, the Hunza Valley, the Gilgit Valley, and a couple others, where people lived to be 120 years old.
Amazing Hunza water.
Yes. Yeah. That's who these people were, right? They were wiped out by the Tibetans, who wanted to have a male priestly order that, only focused on religion, while the people worked their buns off to bring them the food that they needed to live and all their offerings. So,
well, I'm talking about service that comes from your heart to serve another, like I serve you. It's what I would like to do in the evenings is to fix you a meal. Just like Mike likes to call you right when you're eating that meal. There are ways that we serve the people that we love in our family, but then how else can we serve? And when we looked at the way we could serve our country, we realized that we were older. We weren't going to get out of our chairs, but we really love researching in the internet. And we were phenomenal teachers back in the day, and we could just apply it. I mean, we saw the internet as a blackboard, a multimedia platform that we could teach you these truths.
Absolutely. And we're supposed to be a religion of one, because it's your own direct revelation that you're supposed to be seeking now, not some lineage path. So no lineage path except Christianity, but Christianity is a direct personal experience. And if it isn't, then it's not real Christianity, right? I mean, when you, like Michael McKibben will tell you, he can talk to someone and see whether by just talking to them, and so can I, if they've had that religious experience that made them turn towards Christ. And if they have, then they're a different being than they were before. And they didn't need anyone. They just needed to turn towards the spiritual and let the spiritual beings come and help them basically midwife their spiritual birth.